Hello to all you Patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to a special episode 184 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the number one pre-recorded podcast in Canada. We're recording on Wednesday? Yeah, today's Wednesday, May 30th. My name is Andrew. I'll be your host. As always, I'm a recovering libertarian, competitive shooter, and a firearms instructor at Ragnarok Tactical. Special guest tonight is Nolan from Matador Arms. Nolan's the owner and chief janitor.
Head cook and bottle washer, you bet.
There we go. We'd love to hear your feedback about the show. Please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback, or you can email the show feedback at CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Of course, you can find us everywhere fine podcasts are bottled. That'll be Stitcher and iTunes. For the social media, you should be following us on Instagram and Facebook at Canadian Patriot Podcast. And if you're listening to this before June, you're a Patreon. And if you're listening to this after June, you're not. So I'd like $1. If you go to patreon.com/CPP, you can become a Patreon today. For just $1 an episode, you get a better quality version of the show. And the more you pledge, the better the rewards are. You can show you're not a communist by buying a CPP t-shirt for just $19.99 plus shipping and theft. You can visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com's homepage and follow the link on the right. You want to go all the way to the right. All right, so everybody's heard Nolan is back. Nolan's been on the show before twice, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was it twice? Yeah, might have been.
I think we're up to 3 now, but I wanted to get you on today, not just because C71 passed yesterday and the timing is terrible, and I'm sorry, but because you had a new product that was recently announced, and I was talking to you guys about getting you on to talk about the regulator.
Yeah, that's right. It's been a lot of activity with us here over the last while. So we've had the regulator and then our magazine adapter here. About 6 weeks ago, I think. So.
Yeah, so I wanted to get you on to talk about that, and I don't know that we really went into a lot of detail previously when you were on, but I wanted to get a little bit more background about Matador for our listeners. If you can tell me, sort of who you are, who Matador is, and why you got into manufacturing badass muzzle brakes.
Yeah, we started Matador. The quick version be probably at about 2014, and initially came out with the Sabertooth SKS chassis and kind of went down that road of a lot of different SKS products, and then also brought out a range of muzzle brakes and a few other things. It was kind of just started. I guess the background was I really wanted to do something that was outside. Previous to that, I'd worked in oil and gas, and I just kind of really wanted to do something different. And I'd always, been into guns, been a shooter, started competitive shooting, I think when I was, 10 or 12, something like that. And thought, hey, I know a bit about guns, so let's get into that. Let's give that a try. And, here we are. So
when you were doing oil and gas, was that also like in the manufacturing space, or was that something else in that industry?
In the specific set that I worked in, I did manufacturing and also field operations. So manufacturing of equipment for drilling operations.
Okay, so putting something on a mill or a lathe was something that was already kind of up your alley. This wasn't something you were given a try for the first time.
Yeah, no, exactly. I hadn't really manufactured for, say, retail per se, I guess. But more, I guess you'd say heavy industrial. So much bigger things than firearms parts in terms of size and cost.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just kind of, I guess that age-old question, like you have a, hobby or an interest or something that you've done for a really long time, and you're like, I'd like to do more of this as a business. And then we just got into it, myself and my wife Annika, and basically made about every single mistake you possibly could, and
Yeah, I think that's part of owning a business. That's not an industry specific thing. I think that's just part of how business works. Is you got to figure out how to do it right. That's mistakes and improvements.
Yeah, exactly. It's
So are you doing this full time now? Are you out of oil and gas and this is you just run Matador day to day and build cool gun stuff?
Yep, yeah, exactly. Um, I occasionally will still do a little bit of oil and gas work, but that's more so on the side, just you know, for friends and acquaintances, that sort of stuff. But no, Matador for us is full time. Um, I guess really since about 2016. So
No, it's awesome. I'm sure that there's not a lot of people in Canada that are able to do full time firearms businesses. Speaking
yeah,
from experience.
yeah, no doubt. It's well, the Canadian landscape's kind of really different, and I like I don't I know I'm speaking to the crowd here, but a lot of it came too that I really saw as like from the consumer side. There's all this stuff out there, and it either comes from China or from the U.S. And I'm like, at the start, I was kind of like, well, why aren't people making stuff in Canada? We do actually have a fairly sizable market here, but everything I wanted kind of had to come out of the States and stuff like that. So, um,
So I guess
I,
on on the opposite end of that, are you sell your products in the U.S. and to U.S. Retailers? Are you finding any ITAR type problems sending stuff into the U.S.?
no, not for us because we have the we do all the correct permitting and stuff like that. So we have uh, you know permits that run for 2 years for set amounts of units and things like that. So um, it's the export to the U.S. for us is very easy now. It was
Hmm.
kind of hard to develop, but yeah, and that like again going back to the start of the business, that wasn't even on my radar. I kind of thought, well, let's make this chassis for the SKS, and then we rolled that out, and I thought I'd make that because it was something basically for Canada, and then we got swamped with you know people from the states calling and saying, hey, we want this. So then we kind of went down that road of figuring out how to export that, and then just have carried on. So we try and the U.S. market and the Canadian market are obviously totally different. Um, and it's interesting to see what sells in the States versus what sells in Canada. So like basically for us in Canada, our muzzle brakes, the previous muzzle brakes we made, sold very well, but in the U.S. they didn't sell that well because it's such a massive marketplace and there's so much competition. You know,
Hmm.
especially in muzzle brakes. Um, and then that kind of leads into why we went down the path with the current product, the regulator.
Well, yes. So talking about muzzle brakes specifically, I know the options in the U.S. I mean, everybody in the U.S., every gun manufacturer makes a muzzle device, right? Every silencer company has their own particular style to bolt their stuff onto, and everybody has their preferred brand. But a lot of that stuff's still available here. Is there something that set Matador apart in the Canadian market? Is it, a buy Canadian thing, or is it a design thing that you had a better product or a better price point than your American competitors?
Yeah, the price point on American muzzle brakes at say the mid range of the market, people weren't importing that to Canada. They were importing the Surefire setups and things like that. Um, and then obviously charging a lot of money, an insane amount of money for those.
I may have sold a few Surefire products. I can understand.
Not to single anyone out, I think Surefire's they make an amazing product, but so we
But it's very expensive.
yeah we kind of took that from the view of we can because everybody knows, and it's one of the burdens of being Canadian, especially with the way our dollar has been for the last while. What may be $130 product in the U.S., which sounds pretty reasonable. By the time it gets up here and goes through all the importations, the currency conversion, everything like that, yeah, you're going to end up with a very expensive brake. So it's not the manufacturer's fault; it's just the market. But we found with the Hammerhead, we had a lot of success with that in Canada because it was at you know it was at the right price point, that in that $60 to $70 range, and and was a very efficient brake. Had you know indistinguishable from a brake that you may pay $150 for, American. So we had success with that, and in Canada. But to take those brakes as an example, they didn't sell in the U.S. because you can go out and buy a comparable brake there for $29.99. So um,
That would be hard to compete with. That brings up a question though. The brakes that you were making, there were, I don't lost count, about four different major styles, three different major styles.
yeah, I mean, you've got your half by 28. Uh,
Oh, so I just meant more like there was the hammerhead and there was the one that had the blast shield on it, and then yeah, all of your different thread pitches and
oh,
calibers.
yeah, yeah. So we started out with the Hammerhead, which was a triple chamber brake. Um, and then we went into our Stinger, which was with the basically a triple chamber brake with the uh, blast shield, or the external thread on that, so you could
Hmm.
cover up the brake. And then we had a hybrid flash hider
Yeah, so there was the three, and
brake,
then
the flare stack, and
right.
yeah, and that's kind of works into the genesis of of the regulator is you know, and it kind of, I guess, comes down to a philosophy. Is muzzle brake is a great thing in that it has a lot of advantages in terms of we all know recoil reduction, all that sort of stuff. But then, when we were making the blast shield, it's like, well, the muzzle brake creates problems, can create problems in a variety of situations with
Yeah, as somebody who
us.
shoots CQB and does urban
Yeah,
prone stuff, that having that big three chambers next to the sandy dirt, that's it's a lot of fun.
exactly. And it was like, say, on the, let's call it the tactical side, competitions. I mean, who really wants to be that dickhead with the brake at the firing line at the range, basically pissing everyone off? I mean, some people
I
roll it back,
resemble that remark though. So
but so it's got advantages but problems. So then you create another product, which was, not just ours but others in the market, the blast shield. And so you create a problem, and then then you have a fix for that solution, which is the blast shield. And it just seemed to be like, in kind of engaging with customers, you're talking to them and you're like, yeah, no, brakes are great. And they're like, and then people start talking, well, how much perceived sound do you have, how much muzzle blast, all that. And you're like, oh, okay, if that's a concern, then go to this product and look at the Stinger, which was our brake with the blast shield. And then it, just kind of get to thinking about it. You're like, well, like, I have a problem with, and we didn't sell our blast shield. There's a lot in the market, especially when it comes to muzzle brakes. People start talking about linear compensators and stuff like that, and I really didn't ever have any buy-in on linear compensators. Um, they do very little for recoil. I mean, it's just kind of physics. The gas goes this way or it goes that way. It, unless you had a linear compensator that was like a 64-inch OD, it's not going to dissipate the gas fast enough to actually have recoil reduction. But it's a great trade name, or selling feature, say a linear compensator, but really doesn't do anything. So you kind of get into these worlds, and I saw that. We started on the regulator a year and a half ago.
that's a fairly long time to bring a product to market. 18 months.
Yeah, and a lot of that was there wasn't anything else out there like that, so we didn't when we started, we just kind of started from a blank sheet and said, okay, well, I want to have a triple chamber brake because we know that's what works. Well, actually, sorry, we didn't even start there, but we started out, with our hammerhead brake, saying we want to brake, but then I want an on-off switch on it. I want to be able to turn it off, and and not have to take a remove a part from the gun, put that in your pocket or a pouch, or then come back to it, because that's annoying. So we just said we want to make a muzzle brake and then have an on-off switch, basically. And then, so I say 18 months, but it wasn't like we were working on it for 18 months, 8 hours a day, every day. It's just you kind of run to a point and you're like, I have no idea how to make this, or or how to fix this issue, or design around it, and you stop until something actually like kind of clicks in your head.
So what's that process like? You wait for your grand idea and then go and prototype it and take it to the range and make some adjustments and go again, or like what
Yeah,
does your R&D process look like at Matador?
um, really, that's something I don't. Well, I don't know how to explain. Usually, you make it's an extreme rarity that you would design something, and even with like CAD, all the software, and draw it out, and then make a version and just be like, yep, that's it, let's go. So we started originally with a series of small holes, small ports, um, on the regulator, because then that had the advantage of a reduced amount of travel. Then we moved to larger slots, um, and that didn't give us the surface area. So then we had to kind of go back to the drawing board, revamp the design, and go to back to the actual 3 ports, because that's what we knew worked. But you'll make, like on this, we probably made 15 different versions, and each time you'll take that version, and you'll you know fit it together, see how it works. If it works in an acceptable manner, or at least something that you can shoot with, you take that to the range and try and assess how it works,
So
and
when
then
you're
come back.
doing the actual assessment, you mentioned a little bit the difference between the small holes in the slots and travel. Do you have a way that you can actually measure, I don't know if this is the right word, the efficacy of the brake?
um you, well, what I learned in doing this is you actually kind of start with just the calculations, um,
Okay.
in terms of energy and all that sort of stuff. But really, the only way to test it is by measuring force. And I mean, you start by measuring, what do you perceive that this is working, or not? And when you get to that point, I mean, that's 80% of it. I mean, you can tell as soon as you shoot, is this thing working? Just watch the dot moving. No, all that. And then you can transition into that, to measuring force. Um, I don't like to, and that's one of our other kind of, I guess, culture things. I don't like to publish the force numbers or testing, because you kind of end up getting into the 7-minute abs thing.
Yeah.
So
Well,
uh,
I've wondered that with some of the other manufacturers, and not just for muzzle brakes, but for a lot of these devices, is it seems like some people are really quick to just spin something off of like a manufacturing process and say, well, this is going to work because it looks cool or it sounds good. It's going to have the most reduction, but nobody actually seems to have science behind that. But it sounds like at least your starting point was like, well, I'm going to do the math and see if it's supposed to work.
yeah, and the first few times we did the math wrong.
Okay,
and
there's that learning experience. Yeah.
and then you say, well, in theory this is supposed to work, but in practicality it actually doesn't. So you see, I guess, like what I learned, and what our final product resembles, is you know we started making the triple chamber brakes before. When we started designing this, we were constrained by some size requirements. We wanted to make it as reasonably compact as we could, and so we started out with let's say a lot of very small holes, because then you stagger those holes, and then your top, your outside, only has to travel so far. And that was, we actually did that just for efficiency of machining. That was done in a single chamber. And that kind of resembles a lot of muzzle brakes that you'll see out there, particularly on hunting rifles, even say some of your high-end hunting rifles, where it's just the same diameter as the barrel, but just a bunch of holes,
Mhm.
basically at the end of the barrel. And that, it helps with recoil, but it's not effective in terms of when you're talking about you're looking to get into that, like what I say, just kind of a broad range of 50 to 70% reduction in recoil.
Okay.
That doesn't work, but a lot of people sell them, and a lot of people believe they work, because if I was to hold up those two brakes and start talking to a group of people, you'd have a lot of people that say, well, no, that one works, and I have that and works great and it reduces recoil. But recoil to most of us is subjective, right? And you've seen that. You can shoot a gun and you pass it over to someone else and they shoot it and they're, oh my god, that's got a lot of recoil. I mean, um, so we kind of started there and then just kept going and kept going. And we said we wanted it to work as well as our previous brakes, but with the added advantage of being able to close the ports, basically turn it off. And so that was 18 months. It almost took me 18 months to tell how we got there, I guess. But
No, no, I mean, that's appealing to me, and I'm sure there are listeners that will appreciate the R&D process. We have a number of people that are in manufacturing and into building things, so it'll be the process for how a manufacturer always arrives at these things is always interesting to hear what they went through to get the design from the design to an actual like functional product, ready for market product. I do have a question without getting into maybe the secret engineering piece, but the adjustability. How did you solve that problem without making a removable component?
uh, that it's it. I guess that's kind of hard to yeah, to sum up, because you start with just a list of things that you want. So we want a brake that is efficient, works like this. We want to be able to turn it on and off. And then you start thinking, okay, we want to be able to do that with no tools. We want this, and that. We want to make the entire thing out of steel. We don't want to, risk anything with aluminum or anything like that, and just go through it. And then you start to go through your design. You just go back to that and look and say, like, well, what do we have to compromise in this? We can't get it done. And the initial concept in my head was it would almost be like a coarse thread on the exterior, with the shell would be like a spiral that would just, and we would have offset holes in the interior. So as you unthreaded it and spiraled it out, those holes would line up to create the ports required, where that you could vary. But then that sorry, that's the guard dog. uh,
Highly effective.
but then you start trying to get the concept of that, and you realize you can't even draw it on the computer. It's just kind of an idea in your head, so you have to back away from that and say, okay, well, that's not going to work. So then it turns into how are we going to get a spring in there? How are we going to tension it? Because you don't want to have nuts and stuff. You just kind of, I wish I had a more eloquent answer. You just kind of blindly stumble through that when you're not. I mean, if you're taking some existing, I guess, design or technology, it's very easy to step through that and modify it, tweak it.
So I'm gonna have to get my like Sons of Guns drop out, and this ain't never been done before.
Yeah,
This is a
that
brand new.
that that makes it way harder. And then the thing that you find is when you kind of take that away or bring that out, people look at it and go like, well, they ask the question, why do you need an adjustable brake? And you need
Those
an
people just don't shoot enough.
Yeah, and they're asking that question. It's a fair question, because you've never been presented with the option of a adjustable brake. So then you see it starts to click in some people's head, and other people's question it more. Like one of the questions is, we got asked, again, a fair question, but why 60 adjustable points? Why that many? And it's, well, it kind of comes down to because we can.
I like that. I figured it'd be a lot more engineering of an answer. Like, well, that's how many detents there are because of the radius of the. No, because I like that because we can. That's a much better answer.
We could have made the teeth on the lock nut. We could make those, larger and a bigger angle so that you would only have 30 adjustable points. But why not 60? I mean, people like that. I mean, if you only want 4 options, then a 6 position adjustable stock. I mean, well, an 8 position might be slightly better, or maybe not. I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
So,
What if I wanted to go from on to off? You mentioned there are the 60 steps in the middle. This is a hand adjustable brake, so I could just like crank on it and it would go from on to off. Is it like a revolution to get it from on to off, or am I going to be sitting there cranking on her for a minute?
no, to go. I mean, so that's fully closed, right? And then if to go to open, and it's kind of hard to handle. It's a lot easier when it's on the barrel of a gun.
Sure.
That's almost halfway open, so that's not that many clicks, right? And then keep going, you're pretty much fully open there. So
what's that, about 4 revolutions?
Yeah, it would be. I think it's 3.5 total.
It doesn't seem like a big deal to go through that level of adjustment.
Yeah, it's not like you're cranking on it and stuff like that. And most of the adjustments are relatively fine. I mean, what you'll see is you'll get it to the point where you like it. Either the blast versus recoil, and you'll kind of feel like it's kind of balanced, as I would say. And then it might be just a couple clicks either way. And then, of course, if you want to go all the way open or all the way closed, yeah, it's a couple revolutions. So it's not a lot. I mean, the one thing to be cautious of is, though, when you are shooting, muzzle brakes, anything, barrels, they do get hot. So you want to, exercise caution when you're adjusting the brake. So
Yeah, that's fair. You said it's going to be made out of steel, right? So it'll be.
yeah, it's 4140, black nitrided, so it's heat treated.
Okay, so it'll still definitely get warm when you've been shooting at it for a few minutes.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. So I mean, that's something to kind of take into account. And I mean, in terms of applications, like you say, confined areas, things like that. That might be the scenario where you actually want to close it. The one that I talk to all the time is like for hunting. I mean, you're at the range, zeroing in your rifle, shooting a box full of ammo. That's where you have the brake. Pardon me. Fully open, you're getting the benefit of the recoil reduction. But when you go out in the field and you're not wearing your ear pro, you probably want to turn it off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, because there's no weight change on the barrel, there's no change in point of impact as you adjust it. So that was one of the other, limiting factors of the blast shield was, you're putting a couple ounces, you're adding that out on the end of your barrel.
Yeah, so you change your barrel harmonics and you get a point of impact shift.
Yeah. So that was one of the things, so no additional weight change or anything like that. You're not putting any stress or anything like that when you're adjusting the brake on the barrel or anything like that. So
No, that's super cool. And I mean, basically it's an AR brake, so anybody that's put a brake on before should be able to do it. Does it go with a crush washer then?
Comes with crush washer and shims.
Nice.
Yeah, we wanted to do the shims just because we've gotten a lot of phone calls from people with crush washers, and as you know, I mean, people struggle a little bit with it when you haven't done one before on a crush washer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of the opinion that anybody that buys a muzzle brake should buy two crush washers, one to try it because they're gonna have to figure it out, and then one to actually do it with.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you've got shims because I shim all of my muzzle brakes so that they are consistently timed because I tend to take things on and off fairly frequently.
Yeah. Yeah. That was kind of important to do. So we wanted to do the shims, and then in terms of price point, it is, uh, you know, it's not a cheap brake. So you think if people are paying that, then they ought to have, you know, the options of shimming it or or a crush washer. So
No, for sure. I'm like I say, all of my brakes are shimmed so that when I'm changing barrels or changing brakes, I can put them back on because I know how many little slivers of crush or shim I need.
yeah,
So I'm glad to see that that's an option because the timing on that with a crush washer is it seems to me that it never quite goes back on the same way with the next one.
no,
Right, just tolerances from one washer to the next, they're never quite the same.
yeah, no, and you've got to. It's like anything else. You've got to back up the barrel and all that stuff. And it's really nice to have a vise that you can clamp your barrel in and all that. So and
Yes, for sure.
the vast majority of people actually don't have that. So
Wow, those people are going to have to work on their AR game.
exactly.
Or I guess whatever. It doesn't have to be an AR. I'm thinking about applications for me, but what sort of threading is this going to be in? Because that'll dictate the firearms that it would be easy to install on.
Yeah, half by 28. We'll do the 5.56 for AR-15s, and we'll also do 9 millimeter in the half by 28.
Hmm.
And then in the 5.8 by 24, we'll do the 7.62 308, and then also a 6.5 version with the 6.54. So
Cool.
that we may get into some of the other sizes, but we're kind of going to wait and see on that a little bit. So I mean there are bigger sizes which are common on the larger caliber rifles and stuff like that, but in those four sizes we kind of found from all our other breaks, you cover 90% of the market. So
Yeah, I would imagine that would cover most because I mean most of your big game, your hunting stuff, that's all going to be 30 cal of some flavor.
yeah, yeah, and we have to see kind of where it goes. What we usually do, and with our hammerhead, we offer a ton of different threads on it, because you kind of see who's which segments are interested with the break and stuff like that. So um, I'm not sure. Somebody may want to put it on an AK or VZ58. So we'll probably end up doing the M14 by one thread again. Uh,
Hmm.
just kind of remains to be seen. We have to see what kind of demand is out there for that. So
No, for sure. I'm looking forward to mine. And I mean, it sounds like you already sort of know which market or which user segments you're expecting to serve with this. I mean, I immediately went to like tactical competition. I didn't think about a hunting application at all, to be honest. But it makes perfect sense for me. So who do you figure are your people that are going to buy this? Is it going to be hunters or is it going to be the competition folks or people who do this more for a living?
um, I think we think now, and a little bit for us because of the experience of our company, our background, is we haven't really offered uh, products that were had a large uptake in the hunting segment. Um, so it's not one that I know a lot about. Most of our products kind of go more in the tactical range. Um,
Hmm.
so I'd probably say the bulk will be the more the tactical shooters. Uh, another chunk of competition, and then really by far the bulk of your market is always just the guys that like something cool, just
For
the
sure.
blinkers, and they like the range toys. I mean, they are the kind of the biggest market out there for anything firearms related anyways. So um,
For sure. I can see a lot of appeal to a lot of different types of shootings. I just was curious if there was somebody specifically that you thought might be quicker to pick it up than somebody else. Because I mean, like the Hammerhead, I think, sort of worked for everybody. The Stinger was, I think, definitely geared towards more of that tactical competitive shooter, somebody who's going to be putting their gun inside of a barrel and then pulling the trigger and getting that wonderful concussive force that match directors like to direct back at you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do think that'll be, you know, the bulk of it is, say, on the tactical side. I had some
Right on.
questions from uh, not from law enforcement, for somebody that sells to law enforcement that asked us, saying that they saw an application for training and basically shooting indoors and stuff like that, and being able to have that option. So kind of
100%, I can see that.
kind of gonna kind of gonna take it from there. I mean, right now, on our side, our biggest concern is just getting the first batch, doing the first product rollout, uh,
Hmm.
getting all those out, and go from there. So
Oh, that sounds awesome. I do have a couple of other technical questions because you mentioned that the other brakes that you made were sort of to a minimum dimension. How big is this guy going to be when I put it on the end of my gun? Am I going to need to get a bipod?
uh, it does come out. It's just a shade over 1 inch OD, and then the length is 3.5 inches, 3.6 inches.
Sweet.
So
So
I mean
fair
that,
size, not huge, but definitely large.
yeah, when you compare it to other brakes, it's not that much bigger. Um, and it's certainly not noticeable. I mean, in terms of weight, it's lighter than anything you would do with any of the blast shields or anything like that. So no, it's not that much of an imposition for sure. Being on the gun, um, you know, smaller is always better, but
Hmm.
you know, in terms of versatility, um, we think that the little bit of extra size is worth that you know adjustability or being able to adapt the brake to where and how you're shooting, right?
Oh, for sure. Being that you said 3 inches, right?
3.5.
3.5. So if it's 3.5, if I was in the States, I assume that you're going to export these to the US.
Yep.
If I was in the States and I got a little 12 and a half, could I weld it on and not have an SBR?
Yeah, as long as it's welded or pinned, and the
Right?
barrel.
Because that would make the minimum length for short barrel rifle in the States is a 16-inch barrel, but a permanently affixed muzzle device, as long as it brings it up to that 16 inches, you'd be good.
Yeah.
So you could get a 12.5-inch barrel, put this on at 3.5, that gets you to 16 as long as it's permanently adhered. No tax stamp for our 2 US listeners.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, no, and yeah, people saying the more tactical market are seemingly kind of where it's going. They're less and less concerned with barrel length, especially in the U.S. with the explosive stabilizing brace market.
Hmm.
So that's almost barrel length restrictions and SBRing stuff is I won't say it's gone out the window, but it's definitely not a hot topic like it used to be. So
Shows you I'm getting out of touch with the American stuff. I'm too in
yeah,
tune with Canada now.
the and it's totally something that we don't see up there, or see up here. Uh, is the brace market in the U.S. is huge, and that was kind of the the impetus for a folding adapter, the Sidewinder. So that's paired with a lot of braces, stabilizing braces. So
No, actually, that brings up a good point. So you have the Sidewinder is a fairly new product too. That's less than a year old.
yeah, yeah, it would have come out just last. I guess it would have been June or July. So
So that's
um,
pretty much anything with a buffer tube will get folded.
yep, yep. Basically, a folding buffer tube adapter that locks in the folded position, and then you can. It's reversible, so you can fold to the left or fold to the right, depending on however you want. And that's been a huge product for us, and probably 99% of them have gone to the U.S.
So I guess this is another like Andrew's ignorance of the American market thing. But why are folding stocks so popular? I don't see the appeal.
Yeah, that's a big question, Andrew. Uh,
Well, that's what I mean, like, because I mean, our stuff we have to hit the overall length, and I honestly I have no idea how a folding stock even applies to our laws because it's not one of those things that I've seriously looked into.
it. I mean, I think in generally, um, well, first in Canada, it's got to be you have to meet your minimum overall length. You can't have you you can't if you have a folding stock and the gun is capable of firing when it's folded, then then your stock doesn't count to your overall length. So then you're under your minimum overall length in Canada. Um, in the U.S., it's overall length, as you just said, is not important. It's barrel length, right?
Right.
Uh, that's kind of what they're judged by. So, I mean, folding stocks in Canada, I mean, you're still stuck with the 18 plus inch barrel. You can't really get around that. Um, but why are folding stocks popular? It's kind of that versatility thing. People just like it. Um,
Oh,
you
I
know,
know. I'm
but
all for people liking it. I'm having a because for me, if I were to put it on one of my ARs and fold it, I don't know if I have a case that's deep enough at that point.
yeah.
Right?
Well, see, your AR shouldn't be going into a case. It should just be, going behind the back seat in the truck.
Yeah, it should ride in the gun rack in the back window. But
Yeah,
since I'm not allowed to do that, I mean, not permitted by our government to do that.
exactly. Y- yeah, folding stocks are. I mean, I've always liked them, but
Oh
you
yeah, I
got.
mean they look super cool. I didn't know. So I guess you said you're exporting the vast majority of those to the U.S. So the Americans seem to love them then.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, the quirk of the laws down there, it's pretty cool when you can take like, and the Sidewinder mainly goes on things like, 870s, AKs. I mean, anything that any non-AR, right? That that has an AR buffer tube adapter.
Hmm.
Um, and and as you know, the market is everything. Somebody makes a stock adapter so you can put an AR stock on everything, even
Yeah.
Winchester 94s and stuff like that. I mean, somebody makes that. Um, so with the brace laws in the states, it does make it pretty cool because you can take like the shock wave, so like an 870 with a 14-inch barrel, and you put a folding stock on it. And it's completely legal, no paperwork required. Um, that doesn't actually make the minimum length in Canada if you do that. I mean, we can have the 14-inch barreled shotguns, but they have to have a fixed stock on them. Not a fixed stock, but they have to have the bird's head or a fixed stock to get your
Hit that
overall.
minimum length. Yeah.
And if you use the Sidewinder on a shotgun, it makes it shorter than the bird's head grip, so you're under the length. So unless you want to change your shotgun to be a restricted, you can't. I don't consult your local laws, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Good advice for anything with guns, I'm sure.
Yeah,
The other new product, and this is like a brand new. I mean, the Sidewinder is new, but I mean we're talking about a year. The other brand new product is your X-Mag adapter. Or I guess
yeah.
I've got that backwards, don't I? It's the Mag X adapter. I should say it the right way around so people Google it better.
No, you're both right and wrong because when we
Oh,
came up with it, we called it the Mag X. But then the very first time someone was talking about it, doing a video on it, and they called it the X Mag, and we're like, yeah, that actually sounds better. But uh, yeah, that's a pistol mag adapter, so you can use P320 mags in an AR-15 uh, in a stock AR-15 lower. So just converts your magwell to accept SIG P320 magazines.
okay. So painting a picture for our audio listeners, it's Effectively, it's a magazine block, like it goes into the mag well
Yeah,
and reduces the size of the mag well to accept the pistol magazine.
exactly. Exactly. And that you kind of see it's slightly funny. I guess maybe not that funny, but everything out there is, the first question that everyone says, does it take Glock mags? Does it take
That
Glock?
was literally my first email when I saw you guys put that out. I'm like, okay, so when's the Glock one coming?
Come out with that. And people do make mag block adapters. Various companies make them, but they're all for Glock mags. And and again, last year when we got to kind of thinking about this, it's like, well, and full disclosure, you can forward all the hate mail my way, but I'm not a Glock guy. Um, they're great guns and everything like that, but I don't. Well, I do own Glocks, but I don't shoot Glocks. And
Right.
but yeah, they've kind of become the default standard. But if you go back to the original concept of the pistol caliber carbine and all that sort of stuff, and you know where it started, so the 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 cowboy or the guy in the West could use the same ammo in his pistol as his rifle and stuff like that, and up into you've got a pistol of some make, and you've also then got a rifle that will accept the same mags. Well, all that's great as long as you have a Glock, and so kind of looking at it, we're like, well, I think the P320 is going to be a pretty big and important gun once the U.S. Army adopted it.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely see some marketing reasons to try and pick that up because after Glock, that's
Yeah,
hard to.
and
It's hard to pick somebody after Glock that's like who's the next best double stack 9 mil. Like I shouldn't say best. Who's going to be the most popular double stack 9 mil?
yeah.
Probably the Sig.
Uh, well, I've been conducting informal research on that, basically by what we put out there and what people ask. And I mean, you have to think about how many guns out there, handguns have been sold, and how many people, I mean, just don't carry Glocks. Now, a lot of people carry Glocks, but a lot of people carry other things. You know, CZ75s. I mean, the surprisingly, the SIG P226 still very popular. A lot of them have been made. Uh, you know, even the Springfield XD. I mean, not a gun that I really think about a lot, but a lot of them have been made and sold. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of interesting to get into that and say, like, ultimately, what's the success of the AR-15? And it's a modular rifle. That's the success of it. Uh, you can change anything. It's a bolt-on. Uh, you can adapt it to do almost anything. So, kind of springboarding off that modularity, said, okay, well, we're going to make a mag adapter so that if you carry a P320, shoot a P320, that you can take those magazines and right into your 9 mil AR, and using your same dedicated AR-15 lower without any modifications.
So standard lower. What about the upper? Is there anything? I mean, obviously, it's going to need a 9 mil barrel because science. You can't use a 9 in a 223. That won't work. Is there anything else on the upper that has to be special to make it work?
Yeah, I mean, kind of now the say the industry standard is the 9 millimeter uppers, um, and the basic difference is, as you say, a 9 millimeter barrel and then a 9 millimeter bolt. Um, to use the mag adapters or any of the Glock mag adapters, then you need what's called a Glock cut or a hybrid bolt, and that's just you go from the original configuration of the Colt 9 millimeter, right? Uh,
Mhm.
which kind of used like a modified Uzi mag,
Yeah, basically an Uzi mag. Yeah.
and that was the standard. And then once they started making Glock lowers and all this sort of stuff, they had to do a cut. You have to do a cut on the bottom of the Glock on the bolt so that it will actually to basically to make it thinner so that it will pick up the rounds out of a Glock mag. So you need a Glock cut bolt and a 9 millimeter barrel. Uh, you also then we do recommend running a heavier buffer just for the blowback action, because you've gone from your direct impingement locking bolt to blowback, so that heavier buffer is better. It'll give you
So
smoother.
basically, anyone who has already got a 9mm upper, as long as it's not the Colt 9mm upper, they should be good to
Yeah,
go because it'll work with this adapter.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, and that's I mean pretty much any of the 9mm uppers coming out in the last 4 or 5 years with kind of the PCC craze are all coming out with, as they call them, the Glock hybrid bolts, which will work on the original Colt SMG mags, Uzi mags, and Glocks, and
Right
P320.
on. And well, now
Now,
with this, I think I actually saw this on AmmoLand before. I think it was on AmmoLand. Was the first place I saw it like as a Canadian manufacturer. Is that something you guys get excited about? That you're like, oh wow, this is one of the most well read. Because you made in the same month that this came out, it made AmmoLand, it made the Firearms blog, and it made something else. Lucky Gunner, maybe.
um, they kind of all seem to run together. So once you get picked up by one or two, then they all will kind of pick it up. It was on the Shooting Wire, I think. Lucky Gunner, yeah, Amelan, the Firearms blog.
Like, is that like a big deal for you guys as manufacturers? Because I mean, like for me, if I saw my name in news outlets effectively that I read every day, I'd be like, okay, I finally made the big time. People know who I am.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's exciting for us. It's that stuff is probably more well read in the U.S. than here, but still, no, it's super exciting for us. We're very lucky that we've got such a qualified marketing person at Matador. So
That's for Annika. We're being subtle.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
so,
Just making sure.
no, and it's yeah, no, it is. It's really cool to see. Like, oh yeah, okay, we've written that, got this product out there, and it's always really cool in those articles. And I'm a sucker for punishment, because then I always like to go in and read the comments and
Do
comments.
you ever respond to the comments, or do you just read them through?
I I I won't. No, I don't respond to them. You
Oh,
want
that's
to?
good.
You
Yeah,
want you want to like say like, hey guys, well, actually, let me explain this. Um, but you can't. So, uh, but you've always, just the comments every time, and you could publish something that basically said, hey, we're giving away, you know, uh, gold-plated 1911 magazines for free, and it would just be, you know, no, why? I wouldn't have that. You couldn't mail that to me for, just like all those kind of comments. So,
yeah. I mean, why would you make it for a 1911? Clearly, it should have been a Glock mag.
yeah, yeah.
No,
Exactly.
that's cool. What's the Mag-X gonna go for in Canuck bucks?
Um, actually, got to look in Canadian. In Canadian, it's 159 on our.
That seems very reasonable. If you're a Sig P320 owner up here to get a 9mm AR going, like that seems like pretty low investment.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
obviously you're gonna have to have your 9mm upper, but I mean, if you're gonna build a 9mm AR, another $150 to use the same mags as your handgun seems like a way better deal than buying. I mean, what's that? That's like 3 Glock mags, 4 Glock mags.
yeah, I mean, certainly to us, it's it seems like a reasonable price. And I always think like it's it's what do you really want to do with what you have, and kind of coming out with this product, what I see, like you mentioned cases earlier, what I see in my gun case, and like when I'll go to the range or anything like that, I've got one lower with a stock, I've got two buffers, right,
Hmm.
and I've got two uppers, and and so I use that same lower to run 5.56, on a 10-inch upper, or I run a 10-inch 9mm upper and swap it over to P320 mags. Uh, it just kind of you're just that modularity is kind of the thing that I really like.
No, for
Um,
sure.
and I think that the I guess when you say what, what would the application be? It's general plinking. I mean, to me, it's if you're thinking about, um, you know, home defense or anything like that, right? You're going to want, if you own a P320 or that's your go-to gun, you've probably got one of those in proximity to you, and
Hmm.
then maybe not too far away, you've got, uh, a 9mm AR with some more magazines, and you're all running off the same magazine, which, you know, uh, I just kind of, I like that because to me it makes sense.
Yeah, having all the same, it makes it easy, right? It's one mag. It doesn't matter. I brought my mags to the range, and it works in either my handgun or my pistol caliber carbine, or your home defense application where that's legal, not in my jurisdiction, but where it is.
Yeah, it just to me it makes sense. I've always been and I really really like the whole PCC revolution, and I really find it such a funny thing because, like I mentioned before, about like say go back the old west and the cowboy that would load 4440 in his Henry and his Colt single action, and then I'm not super old, but I'm old enough to remember, when there was the previous PCC revolution and the Marlin Camp carbines and all that sort of stuff. Um,
Hmm.
it's just, to me, pistol caliber carbines make a lot of sense, and that's kind of one of the big reasons we wanted to do this mag adapter. So
Oh, that's super cool. I think I'm going to need to build a PCC, but I think I'm gonna wait to see what other mag adapters you end up developing, because
there might be
I
some.
don't know if I can justify to the missus that I need a new handgun and a new AR. So I don't currently have a 320.
If you buy the mag adapter, Andrew, then you've got the
Right, then
pro.
I'm going to have to build an
Use.
AR and a handgun. I'm going to have to talk her into two guns.
Like, I've got this for P320 mags, but I don't have any P3. Okay, I got some P320 mags now, but I don't have a P320.
Yeah, yeah. See, this is the problem: is I'm going to end up with a lock nut somewhere, and I'm going to have to build an AR to go with it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, uh, no, I mean, hopefully it gets people thinking about it. So, and the definitely the plan, and it's not that big of a spoiler, but we do have other plans with the Mag X to adapt over to a lot of other common uh, pistol magazines. So that was kind of built into the design that we could do it in a certain way where we can adapt that really to anything.
Oh, that's super cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out. Is there any other, um, no spoiler alert, secret projects that you're working on?
Really, right now, this kind of we kind of have our hands full, and
Yeah.
if I'm we're this is this has got us, what we've got on our plate right now is got us really really busy. On all our
No,
previous
that's
product lines, we had a ton of stuff in terms of muzzle brakes and all the SKS stuff and grips. We had a lot of products, and it was honestly just kind of uh, quite a lot to deal with. So we that's kind of our path forward, is we've refined those and kind of come into some specific stuff that we want to actually get out in the market and hopefully keep ourselves sane in doing so.
yeah. Owning a business that can be. I can certainly appreciate that gets to be a challenge. Is that sort of where you guys are at now? Is you've got the streamlined product line. I'm using line a lot,
Yeah,
but you've streamlined your products, so you've sort of narrowed it. Like, this is the focus for Matador for the next little bit, is meet the demand for all the things that you're currently making, get those out to all the consumers.
yeah, exactly. That's uh, you know be very streamlined, and we do have a couple other things that I'm working on. That's probably like the thing that I enjoy about this um, the most, is I do like the challenge of coming up with stuff that isn't out there or hasn't been done. Um, so we always have design stuff that we're working on, and we'll see how that goes. We'll see what where the Canadian market is here in the short term and stuff like
Okay, I guess on that note, I've got to ask: do you have predictions since we're almost in June, and June is supposed to be a magical month for firearms owners? I mean,
I
obviously, C-71 has passed the Senate, so that'll get royal assent. But do you have other predictions?
um I I don't think it was a surprise that C-71 was passed. That wasn't a surprise at all. Um, I I don't know. I go back and forth, and I have. I guess I'll try and say it in a very succinct way. Like having gone through, the restrictions previously, when they changed the Firearms Act, and you've got between 95 to 98 and all this stuff till now. I mean, it's just kind of more of the same. So I'm for sure not going to be surprised if there's some pretty draconian moves in the next week. I, you got to stay positive, and we just have to see. I mean, I'm again speaking to your audience, but I do think I do think the government is being motivated by they want to be seen as doing something about as they term gun crime. So I think they're going to, I know I don't know any more than everyone else knows, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see it go to, ARs moving to the prohibited list. It's definitely possible. I personally don't think that they're going to go after the handguns because I think that's a bit of a bridge too far. But I think AR-15s are an easy target for them, and assuming that they'll act on it.
Yeah,
Assume, but
that's
that's
kind of my concern. Is it's the same sort of thing. As if they're going to do anything, I think the AR-15's easy pickings.
it is, and I think, and again, I don't have any knowledge of that or anything like that. But my guess was the what they came out with. Um, I think that the Canadian Firearms Program put out a memo about maybe it was about a year ago. Um, I'm not going to be surprised if their rationalization for the AR moving to the prohibited list is the differences in uh, the well for the fire control group, right, in the lower receiver. I don't know if you
Mhm.
remember that one, but
Yeah, because
I
it's a converted auto. If it can take if it's been machined for an auto sear, even though it's not actually been machined for an auto sear.
exactly that and that'll be the excuse, even though the market or the industry has moved to that being the standard size for the well on a fire control group for an AR. They'll push back and say, well, that wasn't the original design intent of and type classification for the AR-15. So, well, that's just purely a guess on my part.
Yeah.
But typically, when they do stuff, it's not hard to figure out because if you're watching in the right places, they signal what they're going to do, and that kind of comes to all the uproar that we're experiencing this week.
I guess
I guess
has that had an impact for you guys? Are you guys seeing an increased sales as a result of this, or does that might be a downstream consequence because we just had 10,000 people go out buy their first AR-15? You guys might get some more accessories getting requested in the near future.
it depends. Typically, with restrictions, and again, I can only speak to my specific experience, but when you when you people don't accessorize something that they feel they may lose. Uh, it was the exact same when the long gun registry came in, and people, perhaps I'm not saying that anyone I know did that, but didn't register their guns.
Yeah,
At
no,
that point,
everybody would follow that law. Absolutely.
yeah, I complete compliance, but at that point, you're not you're not you're not buying accessories uh, for those typically. So people will buy an AR now, they'll hang on to it and go for a ride and see where it takes them. But I don't think that they're actually going to be accessorizing it until they have that warm fuzzy that it's going to be a continuity in the law.
Hmm.
So, and then of course, people are getting very worked up, but it's entirely possible that October the government changes and the priority of the next government could be a reversal of all that. So I get very frustrated, and I think that's every Canadian gun owner has that as well. Is it's you want continuity, right? We want reasonable. We don't want any gun control, but we want reasonable gun control, and you just want continuity so you can bank on it. And
Yeah.
we don't want to be in this perpetual swing between governments and everybody saying, what's next. It's definitely not good for the industry, because I know there's a lot of people, in the Canadian industry that have developed specific things for the Canadian market, and I'm really concerned where those are going to go.
Yeah, that's those are fair. I guess we'll see what happens with June through October, and then fingers crossed it's a different government that we get to put up with.
Yeah, it's all very much a crapshoot. Who knows what's going to happen? And to be fair, we've seen this kind of beating the drums and rumors and stuff previously, and then nothing happens.
Well, and I'm definitely hoping that that's the case here, as this turns into a big old nothing burger. But I I'd be buying some extra ARs and some AR parts if I was concerned.
Yeah, yeah. I can tell you from experience when you've had to when you've gotten that letter, and I've gotten that letter before that basically outlines that your registration certificate for a firearm, because you can't own it anymore because it's been moved into a different classification. Um, it's it's your property. It's not fun. It's not. But so I definitely would encourage. I'm trying, in a positive sense. I mean, if you're out there and you're in Canada and you have a firearms license and you don't own an AR and you don't own a handgun, you really ought to buy one just out of spite. So, or several.
Yeah, I'm all for that, and I would definitely never encourage anything illegal. But there is this concept of malicious compliance. I'm just saying, like, you and I might want to trade the same couple of three handguns back and forth every day for the rest of our lives, just to inconvenience the government.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I it's there is safety in numbers with politicians, and that's the one thing that we don't represent in Canada very well. I mean, the handguns, that's why maybe, and it could happen next week. Maybe I'll be sitting here saying, God, I was wrong on that one. Um, but with handguns, I mean, we've got what, 900,000 registered in the country or something
Yeah,
like
just shy of a million.
that. That's a lot of people you're going to piss off when you change something like that. So I tend to think that politicians, they're 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 not that committed to their ideals. They want to get reelected. So I don't know.
Well, I think that's it. Their ideal is staying in their job and being reelected, not alienating a large block of voters. It's not good for business when they do that.
Yeah, exactly. And for us, and that's kind of one thing. And I know it's affects an extremely small amount of people in the country, but for us, it's a all these things are business decisions. They're our livelihood, um, and that can be affected by the laws. But it's also like I own a lot of guns and I shoot a lot of guns, and the thought of losing, potentially you're losing your hobby, a very an important hobby sport, however you want to term it, and losing the business side of it is extremely concerning. So uh,
For sure. On that, I guess if everybody wants to find you and get their new ARs outfitted with some accessories, or not ARs, you guys still do the Sabertooth, right? You still get your SKS product line.
actually, we don't anymore. Those are,
Really?
yeah, we discontinued those. The majority of the SKS product lines we discontinued, and
Ah, I was just looking at easy pull pins the other day.
Oh, okay. We still have a few. But yeah, for any of our current products, you can find us at matadorarms.com, on any of the social media platforms as well, matadorarms.com. Anybody has any questions, or wants to send us some hateful comments, it's info@matadorarms.com. So
I'm so glad you solicit your own hate mail. That's nice. I'm not the only one.
it's free entertainment. It's free
Oh,
entertainment.
absolutely, it is. Absolutely. For me, if our listeners want to check out RagnarokTactical.ca, if you use discount code Patriot at checkout, you'll save some bucks. And we are a Matador Arms retailer at Ragnarok Tactical. So I have a purchase order in with Annika actually to get some regulators.
Yes, and we can't wait to ship them. And I think that's great to support. You know, all the independent retailers in Canada, and anybody that's local to you guys out there, Andrew.
Yeah, we're happy to serve the well, anyone on the internet really, but we really cater to Southern Ontario and particularly that tactical and competitive group of shooters. That's really our target market. So anybody that's like, because I was looking at the regulator and I totally see this being a game changer for CQB. Is
Awesome.
right shooting modified prone in the dusty Borden dirt and being able to crank that all the way down to off. That'll be a nice feature.
Oh yeah. No, exactly. That's what it's made for.
I think the other thing I need to do, because it is getting to the end of the show, I have to apologize to Rod Giltaka. CCFR Radio just put out a podcast yesterday. He would not come on this show with Nolan because he had just done a podcast. So we are looking forward to getting Rod on in the future. And I guess for all of our listeners out there in podcast land, I'd like to remind you that you are the true North, strong and free.